Excellent. So today's agenda, we're going to do just a little bit about what is emergency preparedness and why it's important, a little overview of preparing yourself, emergency preparedness with some organizations. We're going to touch on how we can think about organizational planning in this area, community planning, and some resources. So I'm going to be quiet now. If you want to send us a note, send us a question, send Raina or myself a note, it's fine. We're going to be monitoring the chat questions and we will be responding as we can, but we really want to give our presenters an opportunity to deliver the information because it's succinct and it's very comprehensive, and you'll be able to most likely get your get all the basics that you need from their delivery today. So with that being the case, we'd like to turn it over to Carol Johnson, who's going to lead us today. So once again, welcome. We're happy to have you. Ms. Carol?
Thank you so much. I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you all for coming in. Emergencies are something that we don't want to think about, but the fact that we're actually existing in one now, if ever there was a time to prepare yourself, if you haven't already begun, this is the time. It's not over. And so, one thing the co-ed thinks about in terms of emergencies is all day, every day. It can happen any time of the day or night. It doesn't need our permission. It can just pop up. What can we do best to prepare ourselves and to stay safe and to get through it? So, did you join us to learn more about personal preparedness or emergency preparedness for an organization or business, or both? You can put your answers in the chat. Great, great, great. And that's a good thing because, generally when we think about an emergency, we're thinking about only ourselves. But you have to think in terms also of where you may be at the time the emergency takes place. Would you be prepared at that location to go on? We can go on. So these are the organizations that are associated that make up the co-ed. We have organizations that cover both children organizations, senior organizations, people who deal with resiliency in Harlem. We have a youth group, the Harlem Tutorial Program. And so, in order to build and to work and to be resilient in a community, you need your community to be activated. That's how it works. The same way during the pandemic, it was neighbors that stuck together. Well, these are our neighbors of sorts. They handle different areas in different things so that we can all come together, we can work together in order to build a plan in order for us to first recover and then be resilient and mitigate in terms of what happens next. Next slide, please. So the East Harlem Co-ed, as you can see, was created in 2015, and it was a direct response to the building collapse in the East Harlem neighborhood. We formed in 2021. We were named the Community Emergency Network, so that now we are now in a partnership with the Department of Health, New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. And so we will be hosting a yearly emergency preparation during Emergency Preparation Month in September. We were sidelined last year, but we ask you to save this date. It will be interactive, it will be exciting, it will be held right here in East Harlem, and you are going to come away with so many things. We look forward to seeing you again on that date. So, emergency preparedness. How does that work in your life? What do you do to make yourself safe before, after, during a public health emergency, a natural emergency? And so that's what we're going to talk about today, the simple preparation. And I know when you talk about emergencies, people think in terms of it being a whole lot. But the more simple you can make your plan, the better. It's personalized for you. You can go to the next slide. It's personalized just for you. And so we know that in vulnerable communities such as East Harlem, uh, Lower East Side, certain portions of the Bronx. These are very vulnerable communities, and specifically because you have a lot of low income people living there. And oftentimes in the poorest areas, they are the last to receive assistance and resources. And so emergencies often, when they happen, it may be a big disaster, but emergencies happen on a much, much smaller scale. Whatever disrupts your daily life, a train stopping, you're trying to get work. Have you ever thought about an alternate plan? We had a situation where there was a flooding situation in New York. The worst one was at 145th Street and Broadway's train station. It was literally a waterfall. And it was ironic how there were people who had worked the same job for 20 years, but they had no alternate route now that they couldn't take the number one train. And so these kind of things we don't think about. You have your mother, she has home care. What if the home care worker doesn't show up? Is there like a reliable relative or neighbor who can come in quickly and back that plan up? Because often, if the aide doesn't show up, it may take 3 to 4 hours for replacement aide to show up. So you want to try to think about those things and put that in place. So I have a question again. We'd like you to answer it in the chat room. When you think about first responders, who comes to mind? Okay, we have 911, we have EMTs. I think I saw the firefighters, police, firefighters, nurses, again, firefighters, community members, essential workers. Okay, 911. Has everyone responded? Doctors. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Police, nurses, doctors, EMTs. You, you are the first responders. This was actually a trick question because I knew that everyone was going to put and you're all right. You're all absolutely right. But you are actually the first responder because it's happening to you where you are, and you've got to respond accordingly. If you're alone, who else is immediately there to help you? And so that's where making and creating a plan comes into play. If you know nothing, you'll be all over the place. You could have things looking for things ready to run, but where are you going to run to? You really don't know what's happened. You may hear an explosion that sounds close by. Your building may shake. It may not even be affecting your building. It could be a building across the street. It could even be down the block. But the first thing you realize is that something has happened. Your building just shook. What should you do? Well, go to the next slide. The first thing you need to do is to be prepared and make an active plan now. Don't plan to prepare, start to prepare and plan. We'd like to show you this video as an example.
When disaster strikes, is your go bag ready?
Now, we go to the next slide, did you notice something? It was a critical thing that this lady, whomever she is, that this lady did that kind of threw her off. Did anybody notice something? The first thing she did after the building shook? Okay. So she reached for the phone. But did you notice the phone wasn't there? And so it's a critical thought to always take items and restore them and replace them to where they need to be. To always know where your communications are. We usually walk around with our cell phones, you know, to get uh, cords that you can plug into different areas in your home so that you can keep your phones charged. But that was the first thing that she did. But what's key in here is that as an elderly woman, she had a talk with her neighbors who they've obviously been friends for a while. She's made a plan with them. If something happens, they are going to look out for her. You notice the building shook. This gentleman came, that's the next door neighbor. He immediately came to get her, to take her to his apartment to keep her safe. And this is how you work out a community response and a more personal, hyper-local response. A lot of a lot of us in Harlem and around the city, around the country, in buildings. We've been there for many, many years. Sometimes everyone on your floor, you've got a plan for the people on your floor. You want to try to work something out with them. If something happens, how are we going to do this? I have a large apartment, much larger than my other single neighbors. I would invite them to my home, where we can go through this thing together. There's no need to have to go through anything alone. Next slide. And this is another example.
There's an evacuation warning in full effect. If you live on the east side of Manhattan, evacuate. Leave now. You never know when an emergency can occur.
Thank you. Now, the great thing about this, what did they do? They immediately evacuated. Oftentimes, when we get evacuation warnings and we're in a very vulnerable area, people want to stay home. They want to protect their property. But property is not important when your life is at stake. And many people who live in homes, like in Long Island, Staten Island, during every single emergency, people have lost their lives because they wanted to stay home. If it's a situation where the first responders come to your home and they're knocking on doors and they're telling you to leave your home for whatever the situation is, you need to be prepared to go. The first rule of a first responder is to leave home, to do their job, to help those that are in need, but most importantly and first and foremost is for them to return home safe to their families the way they left their homes. So when emergency responders show up at your door, they're not going to have time. They're not going to give you time to go around and grab your pocketbook or go to this room and get your keys or go here, because the thing about, we all have a built-in mechanism in our brains: fight or flight, adrenaline, fear. Partnered together will have you all over the place. You could leave your pocketbook hanging on your front door for the last 20 years. And when those things enter the picture, you'll forget. You'll run to the bathroom, you'll run to the living room, you'll be all over the place. But then after a while, you'll remember, oh, my bag is right there. I was right there next to my pocketbook. And so this is why we are telling you that it's important that you think about putting together a go bag. Next slide, please. You have to create a plan for you and your family. And these are the different sites and websites that you can go to get further information, particularly the advanced warning system. That's particularly important right now because we are in hurricane season until November 1st. And so, as we can see, we've got all of this rain, flash flooding that's been taking place over the last month. And so, all of this information that we're showing you, with the exception of the slides and the East Harlem co-ed personal stuff, you can find on New York City Emergency Management website. Also, there is a map. If you go there, you'll see a map. You can go to the next slide. You can follow us on social media. You can follow nyc.gov for further information, and you'll get all of this information at a later point after this presentation. The other thing is important to know your zone. What zone are you in? There's a lot of zones that were established a few years ago, and some of them were changed. However, the zones have been reestablished as the water line changes. The water level is rising. And so now that some of us that are right here on the eastern seaboard, right next to the East River, we may now be, some of my buildings are now in a zone one. A zone one means immediate evacuation. I am in a zone two. And so I would be on alert in the event that I could experience flooding and I would have to evacuate my home. This is a map, and it's actually tells you according to the color codes what your zone is. To the extreme left are the evacuation centers. Now you can have a hurricane center where people will go to evacuate because of a hurricane. But the first thing that you would go to would be an emergency center. You can get to the center. Buses will take you from one to the other. There are also medical centers. And so people will be evaluated when they go to that emergency shelter. If they have serious medical problems, they will be transferred to the medical center. But this is giving you a list of where all of your evacuation centers are. Because we have flash flooding and a lot of storms, it's a very likely possibility that at some point in the near future, some of us that are on the eastern seaboard who have experienced major flooding may have to evacuate. And this is not to scare you, but to prepare you. And so you might want to consider really taking a good look at this. Talk it over with your neighbors. You're all together. This is a good time to talk about looking for another alternate plan, finding someone that you can go to, someone's home that you can go to. You don't want someone in your neighborhood because if it happens in your neighborhood, immediate neighborhood, then that's not going to be a good plan. If your neighbor's affected and you're affected, she or they can't help you out. But consider getting someone's home to evacuate, maybe to the west side if you're on the east side, the east side if you're on the west side, in the Bronx. Also, consider your needs. If you have mobility problems, I use a motorized scooter, so wherever I go, I have to be in a place that is totally accessible to me. And so these are other things that you need to think about. Everything about your plan has got to be personalized. If you live with a family member who has mobility issues, that needs to be spoken about to that relative, to that good family friend. Can I come? I stay with my mother. I would need to bring my mother along. Do they need personal attention in terms of being oxygen dependent? All of these things have to be considered. If they're wheelchair dependent, how will you get them out of the home? The evacuators will get them out of the home. But now, if they go somewhere else, they may have to leave those chairs behind. And so these are things that you might consider, even getting a manual chair. So it's a lot, but it's just mapping out according to what your needs are. Next slide, please. In extreme heat, we're actually experiencing extreme heat over these last few months. We have cooling centers available. If you go to nyc.gov, you can find a listing of your cooling centers. Check on your neighbors. They don't have to be elderly, they could just be young people with underlying illnesses. And it's a good idea to maybe cool one room, because when you're thinking about heat emergencies, you're also looking at the possibility of blackouts. And remember, blackouts can take place all year long. People think they only happen in the summertime, but they can happen in the winter. So you want to consider cooling, keeping one room cool. And as the day progresses, go to that room and stay there. You want to not use so much energy. Bring in other things, cold water, cool cloths, maybe a basin with something with a cool water with some ice in it that you can cool yourself off. Stay hydrated. It's very, very important. And your pets too, which we'll talk about later on. Communications are extremely important. During emergency, you may have not have access to your usual communication methods, or may not have accessibility to electricity. So you need to have a written contact list. Oftentimes, we do what? We keep everything in our phones. Everything is in our phones. But what if we don't have our phones charged? And that's why it's always a good idea to have a backup charger for your phone so that you can always have access to it. They also have solar panels that have USB ports in it that you can use. If you know that there's an impending emergency coming, that's the first thing you should do. Charge up your iPads, your phones, stay off the phone, try not to use up your energy, and be ready. We try to remember contacts in our head. But I think right now, probably if I ask for 5 people who can actually remember 5 of their most personal contacts in memory, most of us wouldn't be able to do it. So not only do you want a contact that's outside of your area, you want to have a contact, hopefully, that's outside of your state. Remembering how inundated our systems were during 9/11, we couldn't really communicate. The systems were shut down in the city, they were overwrought. But I was able to reach my cousin out in Baltimore. I was able to speak to my aunt in North Carolina. You want to try to have a contact that's outside of your area, outside of your state. It's important that you as a family create a meet-up location. If something happens and you can't return to your apartment, now what's going to happen? If your child or even your mother, your father, whomever lives with you, and they come to the building and they see that it's roped off, something is happening, you can't gain access to your building. Do you have a meetup location? It could be anywhere that's suitable for your family. Also, it needs to be at least 2 or 3 blocks away from your building, because generally, maybe 2 blocks will be roped off. So it needs to be at least probably 3 blocks from your home, Mr. Sal's Pizzeria. That's where you're going to meet. But if I get to that building and realize that I can't gain access, I'm going to pick up my phone and I'm going to call my emergency contact. And I'm going to let them know I came to the building. There's a gas leak. I can't get in. I tried to reach my mother. I tried to reach my child. I couldn't. I'm on my way to Mr. Sal's Pizzeria. So they already know to pass that information off. Your family member knows to call that contact. Your family member knows to call that relative that has been designated as your emergency contact. And they in turn will let them know your mom, your daughter, whomever it is, they're safe. They are safe. They're at Mr. Sal's Pizzeria or on their way. You want to make important documents available in your go bag. Copies, always use copies. Now you can take your red, white, and blue card, your medical card, your driver's license, non-driver's license. If you're a organ donor, you can take all of those documents, you can put it on one sheet of paper, make a copy. If you're capable of getting someplace where you can have it laminated, you can do that. But also you can wrap it securely in some cellophane. And we look at clear plastic Ziploc bags as our friends, because all your documents and everything need to be in Ziploc waterproof bags. So you can put that information in it, your medical information. When you get your medication, generally you'll have a printout on the outside of the bag. You can put all of that stuff in that bag. And so now you can go to the next slide. We're prepping to shelter in place. Now, we'll talk about the full go bag later on, but the sheltering in place is something that we had to do. We should all be familiar with. We had to do that back in 2020 when they asked all seniors and people with underlying illnesses to stay at home. You don't know how long it's going to take. And so we suggest that anywhere between 3 to 10 days worth of supplies may be needed. Depends on how you eat. Again, it's personalized. So whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a storm, whether it's a blackout, if you live in a high-rise building, of course you can't be roaming around your building. You won't have any elevator service. You need to be prepared to stay in place. And in some cases, it may be more appropriate to evacuate. Next slide. So now we're going to talk about the creation of a go bag. Next video. So these are the essential items that need to be in your bag. And it's important, again, I'm going to say that over and over again, that it is personalized. The object of the go bag is in the event that first responders knock on your door. They tell you you have to evacuate. You've got a few minutes. They're not going to give you a lot of time again in order to get that bag together. And so, or to grab this and to grab that. We saw during the East Harlem gas explosion, 20-degree weather. People were out there for hours in little flimsy nightgowns and thin jackets. And so they had no ID. They had no way of proving that they live in the buildings that had been vacated. 6 buildings were affected. They had no way of proving who they were, where they lived, and they had nothing. And so In this bag, which we suggest that it's a weatherproof bag. Also, it can be a knapsack, it could be a pulley, but whatever it is, it has to be light enough that you can handle, that you're not overwhelmed. Mine is a knapsack that turns into a pulley. And in that bag, you want to put personal items. Again, go back to the ID, the copies of your ID. You can take maybe the front page, make a copy of the front page of your leasing agreement to prove that you live in that apartment. Your keys, a copy of your keys. Small increments of money, fives, tens. In emergencies, people will bilk you. And so you want to have small increments of money, because if you give them a $10 bill for something that costs $2, they'll tell you they don't have any change. And so you want to have those small amounts of money, 10, $20, whatever you could afford. If it's only $5, whatever you can afford, you want to put that in there. You need to have a flashlight, and make sure you have batteries to go with that flashlight. Flashlights also need to be around your apartment. While we're talking about flashlights, everything we're talking about pretty much you can get in a dollar store. And so to create this bag, it really does not cost a lot of money. And you can do it slowly. Go pick up a few items this week, a few items next week, however it works for you. Glasses, if you wear glasses, these are readers. I have reading glasses, but these are readers. So you want to go to the store and you want to find some inexpensive readers, put them in there. If you have mobility issues, because what we realize is that oftentimes when we set ourselves up to prepare for an emergency, it may not take place till 5 years from now. You don't know what condition you're going to be in 5 years from now. So if you notice that you're having some mobility issues now, you might consider buying a fold-up cane. You can get fold-up canes online for $4 or $5. Put that in your bag. Medications. Again, when you have refills done, you always get a printout of what the medications you take. You want to put those printouts in that bag. Now, we know a lot of times certain insurance companies won't give you medication months in advance. And that's why, for those that can only get their medication monthly, it's very important to keep that information in your bag. No one is going to give you a medication if you have to go to a shelter, if they don't know who you are or what you take. And so that needs to be in there. Again, you need that really vital information. If you're a senior, that SSI card, that red, white, and blue card, your medical card from your health center needs to be in there. Again, always copies. You want to put clothing that you can fold up very tightly. You can even put rubber bands around them so that they can stay really, really tight. Before I go there, all of those items again in that Ziploc bag. Now you take your clothing, you roll it up very, very tightly. You can put rubber bands around. The more stuff you can get into your bag. Underwear, lightweight clothing. Ladies, we love leggings, a couple of pair of leggings. Make sure you have underwear, a hat, a sweater, socks. Very important, because you don't know when this is going to take place. It may be inclement weather. So you want to have some type of a back out. Shirts, t-shirts, and nothing bulky that's going to take up too much room in the bag. All of those clothing items in one bag, zip it up as you saw in the video that Angel presented. Non-perishable food, snacks. Watch the salt and the sugar content. If you're diabetic, make sure it doesn't have, they're not high in sugar, because health bars will throw you off and they will tell you, oh, this is healthy, and people just snatch them. But if you look at the sugar and the content, sugar and salt content, it's often extremely high. So granola bars, things that will give you energy, but don't cause you to get thirsty. We'll talk about that again when we get to the food. Um, and make sure that the expiration dates on those items are far off. We're in 2021. You want to look for stuff that may be 2024, 2025. Also, water. Put a couple of bottles of water in your go bag. Now, they suggest that you use a gallon of water a day. But for a go bag, you're going to another site, you just need maybe just one or two 16-ounce bottles of water. That's just to hold you over until you get to whether you're going to a shelter or whether you're going to a friend's home. And be careful with the water as well. Make sure that the expiration dates are far off, because water doesn't expire, but the bottles do degrade, and they will expire on you. Toiletries. You can get the little weekend size toiletries, deodorant, toothpaste, whatever that you use, soap, shampoo, conditioner. Again, meeting your personal needs, dental needs, whatever you need in your bag. That's what needs to be in there, and you can get them in the small sizes. The other thing that we look to are maps. Dust masks. You may be leaving in a dusty situation. It could be a very, very hot situation. So you want to make sure that you have things like um, baby wipes, your washcloths, a small towel, so that the whole purpose of this is to be able to take care of yourself wherever you go. You don't want to go to someone's home even and be a burden. You can have everything that you need right there at your disposal. And it makes it easier on the person that you may be staying with. You don't have to ask them to use their personal items. Cotton swabs, aspirin, or Tylenol if you can't tolerate that. So these are the kind of things that, again, it's personalized what you need. Feminine products, baby items, children items, formula. Your children need a go bag too. Your baby needs a go bag as well. And so those bags would have their clothing, their personal items if they take medication, a favorite toy, something that keep them occupied, a book. You would also put a book in your go bag, the Bible, the book novel that you've been looking to read for the longest time and you never got through. Throw that in there as well, just to keep yourself occupied until you make your final descent to where you're actually going to be, in the event that you may have to go to a shelter initially. And then you may be able to transfer over to that friend or that relative's house, but you want to be as comfortable as you possibly can be. So, yes, your child needs their own go bag, and so does your baby. The formula, the diapers, everything that your child needs, ointment, pets too. These days, you see more and more people with pets, and they're not thinking in terms of what are we going to do with our pets? They need to have their own little bags. And we found something that actually shows a little pet go bag. It's a little bag that you can put on your dog's back, and it could have his chew toys. It'll be light, very lightweight. His chew toys, some snacks, if he takes medicine, a flea collar, whatever will make it very light, and he can carry his own, definitely his papers to show that he's had his shots and that he's healthy, because pets are allowed in our shelters. So, you know, Fido can carry his own stuff. And then the heavier stuff that you may have, you could put a pet bowl in there. They have the collapsible pet bowls. You could put that in there. They have little doggy first aid kits. You can put that in there, and he can carry his own. And the heavier stuff you would put in your bag. So again, all of this information will be available to you also in your bag. Pets need water. Make sure you bring extra water for your pets. They get overheated very quickly, and often in the summertime, the pets are running around and people are not really thinking. You need to not only walk around with little bags to scoop the poop. You also need to have something to cool them off. Maybe some cool cloths to cool them down. Let them run in the sprinkler. Get some place where you can kind of hydrate them and put some cold water on them, aside from also letting them hydrate themselves by drinking water. So pets are very sensitized by heat. And all of this, again, will be in that bag, but also you want to keep a picture of your pet and take a picture of you and your pet together and put that in their bag. And you keep a copy in your bag. Why? Because oftentimes during disasters, sometimes pets get separated. And I know with the Harlem East Harlem gas explosion, for example, the people, they had to get the people out first. And when the people were out, they went back in to check. Those are the vacated buildings. They went back into the building and found several pets, and they were able to bring the pets out. So if you have these documents already for the pet and you happen to go to a shelter, something happens, there's a mix up, your pet gets separated from you. You may go to one shelter and the pet may be in the other shelter. That information, the documentation, everything will be in there. Okay, this is Evie Yeager's pet. That pet needs to be transferred to the other shelter where she is, or whomever the person may be. It'll be transferred over there. So this is very vital for our little furry buddies. Also in the bag, when we talk about foodstuffs, you might want to think about putting like crackers, peanut butter, dried fruits, dried roasted nuts, tuna fish, salmon, sardines, something that you can eat, that's healthy, that's quick, that doesn't have to be heated. Definitely need flashlights, a whistle, possibly like a glow stick. If something happens and you're in the apartment and you hear people are moving around, you can actually put a glow stick outside your door. They'll know that you need assistance. Whistles are very, very vital. It saved the life of an elderly man in Brooklyn during Sandy, where he was blowing the whistle. He was using something to hit on the wall and what have you, but he was losing his strength. So he had the whistle. He was keeping up with his elderly neighbor who was yelling, and yelling will make you hyperventilate. And so you make noise because responders are listening for noises, and also noises reverberate, in the hallways, they echo. And so after a point, he realized that his neighbor was no longer making any noise and she was found dead. But he sent them, when they came, when the first responders got there, he said, "Don't worry about me. Check on my neighbor first. I haven't heard from her." But they tried their best to keep up with each other. So that's very important to have that whistle. Definitely a flashlight, a poncho, may have to go out in the rain, a lighter, matches, a dust mask. Again, it may be a dusty situation. If you can, goggles. They sell goggles in the dollar store So you can get that for a dollar. And again, moist towelettes in case you just want to freshen up. So at this point, I would say make sure that you talk to your landlord. You can go to your local fire department and let them know if there's anyone in your apartment that has need for oxygen, or they are electricity dependent. They may have to use some type of nebulizer or CPAP machine. You want them to know that this person is there. And if something happens in that building, it will be noted that they will be amongst the first people that will be evacuated. In the in the event that there is a blackout and there's no power, but also if it's a storm where someone has to be sheltering in place for a while, they're going to have to be they're going to have to be monitored. They possibly may need to be going to a medical facility in order to be monitored. So I know oftentimes that we have people in our apartments and no one knows that they're there, but this is vital. This is absolutely vital that they know that these people are in your home. And so pretty much anything else that you feel that you would need in that go bag, that's entirely up to you. Again, personalize it, a first aid kit, $1. All of these things can be, if you have spare contact lenses, you can put them in there and keep the door close to your front door. So in the event you have to go, that's the purpose of it. Grab it, go. If it's wintertime, they may let you go to that coat closet, grab a coat, grab your bag, and go. But what should you do in the event that something happens and you don't know what it is? Call 911 if it's a medical or life threatening emergency. Always don't call a neighbor or a friend first. If there's the smell of gas, you may call your management, let them know there is a gas smell, a strong gas smell. You don't want to leave your apartment. But anytime something happens, you want to wait for the first responders to give you your directions. If you smell gas, put a towel under your door and move away from that front door. You can close your windows to keep the gas from coming in. If it's already in there, open your windows and let it escape. If there's a fire, you want to go furthest away from your front door and close those doors behind you. If you have a front window in particular, go to that window, wave something light colored, white, yellow, something very light outside the window so that they'll know you're there, particularly in a high rise. You can always call the co-ed for assistance. If you're looking for more information on what to do in an ongoing emergency, or just more information on preparation, or if you're looking to volunteer or make a donation, we can always use volunteers. It's such a rewarding work. Or if there's an ongoing emergency in East Harlem and you want to know how you can possibly be part of the plan to assist your neighbors in your community, then please, by all means, contact us. If you're looking for non-emergency information, you can always call 311. Or you can call any New York agency. You can always Google nyc.gov, New York City Emergency Management, and get the information. You can be a part of their monthly community newsletter to find out what's going on around the city. You've got the Red Cross, the fire department, teach non-inhalation, CPR. It's free. You can check with them. They're only teaching chest compressions. I believe they're also teaching how to do CPR on children, but it's non-inhalation. And so there's a lot of different things that you can learn on how to help yourself. Um, and you don't have to rely outside. Sometimes emergencies are not as big as they appear to be. And you can actually solve the problem without calling anybody. And that's why you're the first responder. You can respond best to the circumstance that you are in. So if you have situations where you have neighbors that need help and they don't know what to do, you can call 311 to help them, to get information on power outages or safety hazards. All of this stuff is available online. And truly, if you're not computer savvy, then talk to a young neighbor, one of your young nieces or nephews or grandchildren. Help them get you on the internet so that you can find out what's going on in your neighborhood. Citizens app is a good thing because those people never go to sleep. If you awaken to a large boom or something, I guarantee you, Citizens app, somebody's going to see it. Whatever happens, someone is there and they will more than likely see it before you do. And so I know that's the first thing that I do. I go to my social medias. I go to Citizen app is going to start pinging. I'm going to Facebook. I'll go to Instagram. And there's nothing wrong with going on those sites. You don't have to get into the whole personal thing with the friends and liking and everything like that. But you will get news streams. You can get different news channels that will be streaming information that you can get. And so that's where those social medias come in. You can create a text line amongst your family and your friends that if something happens, you guys are texting back and forth, making sure everybody is cool, everybody's okay. If there's something wrong with one, the rest of the family can reach out and get them the help that they need. They have things like Trello that you can actually come on, you can actually take pictures of scenes that's actually happening at the moment, and you can send that to different live streams and let people know this is what's going on here, mainly to avoid it. Secondly, if you're in the middle of it, then you know immediately you need to be planning to prepare to leave or possibly shelter in place. I keep clothes always ready for me to jump into right there next to my bed in the event, because if I have to answer the door, I'm getting dressed. I'm coming down. If they say you have to leave now, you may have a few minutes because generally they're knocking on several doors at one time to get a response. But if I'm going to get on my clothes, I'm coming down. If I know it's wintertime, I'm grabbing my coat, I'm going to the door. What is the problem? You have to evacuate. Well, now all I have to do is grab my bag and go. And I am prepared to take care of myself as best I can in whatever situation I can until I return home. So I think I'm going to stop there. And all I can say on behalf of the COAD, we thank you for being here. Someone asked something about a solar panel. You can get them online. Actually, you can Google solar power, and you can get solar panels. You can get small ones, you can get larger ones. I have a small refrigerator in my bedroom, and I have a solar blanket that will keep that up in the event of a blackout and I lose power, because solar energy is always accruing 24 hours a day. You don't need energy for that. And it also has UBS ports. So I can also plug it into my refrigerator, unplug it from my refrigerator. I can plug my microwave into it and then take the microwave out if I want to get something to eat, and then put it back on the refrigerator. That's the most vital thing that I want to keep running. It has ports where I can also plug in to keep my phones and my tabs uh, operating. So, with that, again, I want to thank you so very much. Again, your personal information, the East Harlem COAD is always available for you. And we're willing to come out and do presentations as things open up. We're willing to do them online. You know, make sure everything in that bag is separated. Make sure you have your stuff for your kids together, and don't leave out your pets. Okay. So at this point, I think I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Evie to take the second point, or we're going to take a break first.
Well, Carol, first of all, before we even go forward, we just gotta listen. I don't know about everybody else on this. Can everybody else just give me a hand or raise your arm up or something? Let me know you rolling with me right now. Right. Thank you so much, because Carol hit on some stuff today that I'll be honest with you, I wasn't even really ready for. I mean, she told us stuff about, let me tell you guys what I wrote down. We family, right? We can share these things together, right? Supplies, Water, I don't have any of that. I ran to BJ's the other day to get a case of water. I don't have any water. I don't have a pet, but didn't know that pets could have a cute little to-go bag we have to put together, and they can carry their own little go bag. A backup charger, don't have one of those. Definitely don't have one of those. Mr. Sal's Pizzeria, where is your Mr. Sal's Pizzeria? Which brought to my thought, maybe we need to be thinking about how we collectively, our community board or our little block association or our building association, how we can work with a local business to be our kind of go-to place, a corner bodega where it's maybe, and I know a lot of us in Harlem and everywhere else, Jimbo's is everywhere, right? Maybe Jimbo's needs to be our Mr. Sal's Pizza if necessary. A local faith institution, if you have one, have we partnered with those institutions in order to help us and be that go-to spot in an emergency? Does your family have a meetup location? Raise your hand if your family has a meetup location. Don't be ashamed. I don't have one either. No meetup location. Oh my goodness, something else Carol said, batteries. Pass by batteries every day. BJ's, ShopRite, and you look for one. I bet you we got one for the remote. Yeah, we can keep it real. We got a battery for the remote, or lose our minds when the battery for the remote, or for those ladies out there who use the Clinique facial thing, when that thing goes out, we're going crazy. We need the battery for that. Otherwise, no batteries. And then one of the things, Carol, that you mentioned was critical. 3 to 10 days of supplies is generally a best practice. That was great information. So when you think about 3 to 10 days, that's a long time. We remember the pandemic. I know those first 48 hours when you said stay home, everybody was looking at each other like, are you kidding me? So we're talking about 3 to 10 days, maybe sheltering in place, and you don't have supplies. So while we can, my grandmother always says, right, in times of peace, prepare for war kind of thing, right? And let's get ourselves packed up, make our list. It doesn't have to be very expensive, as Evie presented in our chat, just telling us about little ways that we can kind of repurpose some clothing that we might have or other stuff. It doesn't have to be a whole lot of money, but just being mindful about it, put some little things together if you can right now, and you build up as we go. So Ms. Carol, thank you so much for your comments today. They really got me going. And our team out there, I know they're with us. They got the thumbs up. They're letting us know that we're with us. And that was some great, great information. So we're going to move forward a little bit. And then thank you. We're going to move forward a little bit. We're going to have Evie to present to us, and then we're going to hit a break, and then we're going to come back, do some wraparound, and we're going to close out. All right? All right, Evie?
Actually, could we take the 5-minute break before?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So it's 1:08. Let's do 8. Let me see. Let's do maybe 1:14. Give us a chance to go. 1:15, right? Give us a chance to go to the restroom and just stand there and go to your closet and figure out if you got a battery. Because I know I don't have one. 1:15. Let's come on back. And we're going to jump right in, wrap around, and close out. All right, Ms. Agatha, I see you. We're going to get your question when you come back. You don't got no batteries either, right? Not one. I know. It's all right. Don't
And
be embarrassed.
remember, all phones have flashlights in it. So that's your first flashlight. There's my flashlight in my phone.
Look at that. Well, I tell you what, I don't have a charger, but if anything happens, I'm going to Carol's house. I know she has everything we need. I'm packing my property up right now. So, all right, guys, let's take a break, 1:15, and we'll see you back shortly. Thank you, everyone.
Miss Carol?
Yes.
Hi, it's John Reddit. I just
John.
wanted to tell you, you did a great job.
Thank you so much.
And I've trained at particular times for things like this because I have a school in Harlem, and I saw this workshop and I said, this would be important. And down the line, I would love for our parents to get this workshop as well, because a lot of times parents don't think about things like this.
Well, you know what? Let me put my email in the chat, or you could just send it to the East Harlem Coed at Gmail.
Well, I'm not in the United States right now. I'll be back and I'll be coordinating things at our school, and I'll stop by your guys' office because I have your information. And
Well, we don't actually have an office. We're still, we use a room for our meetings at the Neighborhood Action Center, but
oh,
we
okay.
generally will have rooms that we have access to. But no, we're still a little homeless,
Oh,
but it doesn't stop us from doing the work that we need to do.
huh. Well,
So I'm
maybe down the line, maybe because my school is Harlem Link Charter School, maybe we can find a home for you.
That would be wonderful, because actually we've worked with Harlem Link before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a few years back we did a presentation for them. I believe it was the parents.
Yeah, Ms. Babs, the Parents Association.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm the founding board member for Harlem Link.
Okay, so I did that as a CERT, community emergency response member under NISM, New York City Emergency Management. So I remember working with them.
Okay. Well,
I can't send you a personal message.
I'm gonna send
but I
you.
am gonna put my email in the chat.
I'll give you my email as well.
And that also goes for Miss Ponzella Johnson. This is also for you. Evie, can we make it so that we can do some personal messages? Is that possible?
I did that to the best of my ability, but it seems to not have worked.
Okay, no problem.
I'm gonna reach out.
All right, well, I'll send it to everybody. I'll send my email to everybody. It's all right.
And okay, so mine is in the chat, and you can reach out to me at any time. Okay. Yes, that would be great, Miss Johnson, my namesake. And just let us know, because I know a lot of things aren't opening up, so we'll still be willing to do stuff virtually if you'd like it that way. So
everyone, if you'd like to definitely get some more information or want us to contact you further, Department of Health and East Harlem COAD, please, if you just feel comfortable, feel free to put your name and your email in the chat, and we'll create a little networking list if you're interested. So that we can have help Miss Carol out with a little blast of information. All right, we have a lot of partnering happening. Just throw it in there if you're interested. We're happy to kind of get you some information and get things going. Please put your name and info in the chat if you're comfortable, and we'll get that together.
And I even thought, I'm on vacation and I'm at my other home in the Dominican Republic. If you
see a palm
we
tree.
See that.
Being a hater right now, we see the palm tree.
I'm sorry.
And look at me. I'm sweating up a storm, and you're down
I'm
in
sweating there too.
Not nice.
Oh, wow.
Hey, you ladies have it together. My wife put this together. We got 3 houses. You ladies are on point.
Oh, thank you so much.
Because us guys, we can be idiots at times. Okay, I just lost. I wish my kids were here. They help me with my computer all the time. I miss not having my kids around. Okay.
So everybody grab a nice cool drink or a snack. I'm a foodie, so food is generally always coming in my conversation.
Well, I'm getting ready to make oxtail, so.
Oh, he just makes it worse. Dominican Republic, in the Dominican Republic, and you're eating oxtails.
I really wanted oxtails today. I've been eating the seafood, which is excellent, but I wanted some good old home cooking. So I figured oxtail.
And this is
that means you're not actually from Dominican Republic. You're from the West Indies, Jamaica.
and down south.
I'm from, Grandpa was from Jamaica.
Okay.
On Barbados.
All right. I hear
This
you.
is a nice thing to invest in. They're about $16. It's like a 24
bottle, yeah.
ounce canisters called Arctic, RTIC. And this will keep your water cold for like 2 days. Literally, I had ice 52 hours later.
Wow, cool.
And
Well, I have
so, you know,
something
when
like
you're
that.
moving around and you can always add water to it, it will immediately become cold. You can always have cold water at your disposal.
Excellent.
And also for your pets.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know that
Well,
much about pets. Can they drink cold water?
oh yeah, they like water,
Well,
believe
that
me.
would be perfect for them too, because they really get overheated quickly.
Yeah, I have 2 cats in New York and 1 cat here in Santo Domingo. And I even told my wife, now we have to set up, because we're 2 blocks from the beach, an emergency plan for here.
Great, great. Wherever you are, that's the key to this. Wherever you are, if you're at work, you would consider getting a go bag at your job, keeping a go bag at your job, you know, and don't put your personal information in it, because you'll have your purse at the job, you'll have your wallet, so your information be in there. Go bag in your car, because you just don't know when it's going to happen.
Yeah, my biggest thing with students, I have 450 students, is to get them out of the building if there is something, or lock them in case something goes on outside. You know, those are the key things, because we're right next to King Towers, and there've been situations and difficulties at times.
Yeah, well, I'm not far from there.
Oh, okay.
I grew up right near King's Towers.
No, excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
so yeah, those go bags are really important, and they don't have to be as major, you know. But one thing clearly that we saw during the pandemic was, remember how people were getting like 20 packs of toilet paper, and they was getting like 10 packs, and you couldn't find any toilet paper on the shelves, any cleaning supplies on the shelves. And what happened is later on as the pandemic went on, you couldn't find Lysol and you know, Clorox wipes, and people were actually producing fake Lysol and selling it online. And so if you get these things and have them in your home already, you don't have to go crazy. You know, so even like right now, because this is starting to morph again, we don't know where this pandemic is going to go at this point, how long we're going to be here. And so this is the time to go get the toilet paper and all those items that you couldn't get before. We also have some videos that we'll be sending out, how you can make your own sanitary wipes, how you can make your own hand sanitizer out of aloe, alcohol, and some special sweet fragrance. You can make that. Get regular a dollar roll of paper towel, cut that in half. You've got 2 separate sanitary wipes. You can put them in a bag. Just put them in a Ziploc bag. You can take one with you. You can put it in your go bag, because we are still in a pandemic. So if you have to go someplace, I find myself just wiping things off. Not frantically, but I have to wipe things off, because I know the people in those places are not. So you can keep those in your bag.
I don't know about you, once again, Miss Carol, I just hope you have that space that we spoke about a minute ago, because I'm on my way to come stay with you, pending the next disaster, and everybody on this call will be joining me. So I hope your deep freezer is full, because we're on our way to your house. All right, so thank you so much again for this opening presentation. We're going to turn it over now to Evie Yeager, who's going to give us some more important information about emergency identification and personal information, and some other comments that she has for us. Then we're going to jump into some Q&A, and we're going to close out. Time is now 1:19. Evie, take it away.
Thank you so much, Kim, and thank you, Carol, for that wealth of information. Welcome back, everyone. Again, my name is Evie Yeager. I work on communications and planning for the COAD. As you might know, our original presenter had a personal emergency and was unable to be here today, but I want to shout her out for doing so much excellent work to prepare for today. Doris Garrido, so sorry you can't be here, but thank you for all that you did to share this valuable information with everyone. Doris's experience and mine are a little bit different, so I'm going to do my best and speak to the things I feel like I know about. And if you have questions that I can't answer, I'm going to find those answers and respond to you later via email, because I'd rather you have the right answer than whatever I could just pretend to come up with in the moment. So thanks for your patience and flexibility about that. So these are some templates that we're going to share with you by email after the presentation today, that Carol spoke to earlier, about making copies of your IDs, all the different IDs that can be useful or relevant in like a shelter situation, including prescription information. Don't feel the need to write any of this down. Again, this will be shared with you after. I just want to show the examples. This is a template. Again, we talked about how we keep our information in our phones or our computers, right? But in an emergency, we may not have access to those. So this is a template to write down some of the most critical or immediate information you might want to have on hand, and then put that in your Ziploc waterproof bag in your go bag. These are some more things Carol spoke to already, so I think I'll just skip ahead if that's okay. So Carol was mostly talking about personal or individual, family, household kind of preparedness, and I'm going to speak about organizational or business preparedness. So there are two types of emergency plans I'll discuss with you today: basic emergency plans and continuity of operations or COOP plans. There's some overlap between the two, and we can talk about that. I'm going to walk you through the basic concepts of both and some examples, and then after the workshop, we'll share with you templates and examples, so you can use those to kind of guide your process for your individual business or organization. As you can imagine, the plan for a child care center will look very different from a church or a restaurant or a health clinic. So I'm going to speak in general terms, and then if you have individual questions, we'll do our best. So the first type is a really basic emergency plan, and this is what we usually think of when we think about an organization doing emergency planning, like a fire drill. A basic emergency plan primarily helps us preserve our physical safety, and that includes things like how to evacuate your building, how to find shelter within your building, where to put flashlights and first aid kits and what should go in them, what kind of announcements you might make to your staff and clients if something is going wrong in the building. Basically, a basic emergency plan is like immediate physical safety type things. And a basic emergency plan helps us identify what events or environments might threaten our staff, clients, or workplace. So fire, flood, active shooter, things like that. And then from there we can identify what we might be able to do to minimize those threats, and then identify what resources we already have, whether those are plans or people or physical tools like flashlights, and then identify what else we need to respond to that kind of emergency that we don't currently have. And from there, we can work to anticipate and meet our collective needs during an emergency. A basic emergency plan should prioritize physical and then emotional safety. It should be It should be something that's developed collaboratively. So it's not just a few people at the head of the organization deciding what's going on, but a representative of every department should be part of that planning, and not necessarily like the leader of every department, but as I'm sure you've all experienced at some point in your career, the people at the top don't necessarily know what's going on in the day-to-day interactions with colleagues or clients. So there should be lots of opportunities for feedback from staff, volunteers, clients at all levels to say like what's actually going to work and not just what do we think will work. A basic emergency plan should be reviewed and updated regularly, and it should reflect the reality of our staff, clients, building, etc., and not just what would happen in an ideal situation. Disasters are not ideal. We need to assume that everything will go wrong, not this is the plan based on assuming everything goes right. So sometimes we talk about the ABCs of emergency planning as assess your risks, build your plan, and then complement that with training and drills. And what I really want you to remember from the basic emergency plan is that this is something that everyone in your organization should be extremely familiar with. So imagine that something happened very early in the morning or after regular business hours. Even if you only have a handful of people in the building, if something goes wrong, all of them should know exactly what they need to do to be safe, to exit the building, to shelter within the building, to find first aid kits or flashlights or whatever. Because this type of planning is about immediate physical safety, everyone in your organization should be familiar with that, if that makes sense. This is the type of planning that I think most businesses or organizations already have some version of, and that's great. But a plan is only as good as the training and drills that go along with it. So if the building is on fire, I'm not going to go look for the emergency planning binder. I'm not going to scroll through my email to find out what I'm supposed to do to make sure everyone on my floor gets out safely. The purpose of training and drills is that that physical experiential education, the muscle memory, the I've done this before and I know what to do when it happens for real. And an email just really can't accomplish that. Again, I think most businesses or organizations do at least some of this planning part, but not so much of the training and exercise part, because it's not fun. It's tempting to skip it because it interrupts the workday and the important work we're trying to do. But again, an email really can't accomplish that kind of experiential education. This might be a little controversial, but I want to say, please don't do unannounced drills. Let people know what's going to happen. Be mindful of the mental health of your colleagues and clients and visitors. If you feel like the operations of your organization really depend on having a surprise drill, then at least let people know that it's going to happen at some point within a certain time frame. I understand that surprise drills feel more real and can be more satisfying in some way. But it doesn't make for a very safe feeling workplace. I think most of the time an announced drill accomplishes the same thing and is much kinder and more compassionate and trauma informed for the people in your building. The next kind we're going to talk about is continuity of operations planning, also called COOP, also called business continuity. Basically, this kind of plan is a little less focused on immediate safety and more focused on business. So if the basic emergency planning plan answers the question, how do I make sure everyone is safe right now? Then COOP planning answers the question, how do we keep doing what we need to do? Or what does it look like to stay open safely? And this is something I think fewer businesses and organizations have been able to do because of various capacity issues. A COOP plan helps your organization. Oops, sorry, I keep doing that. A COOP plan helps your organization prepare to maintain operations or services during a disaster. And some of the questions you want to think about are, if when something happens, will we just keep doing what we're doing, and what would that look like if we had to reduce our level of service because we have fewer staff or other resources? What would that look like if we had to reduce our services? Which ones would we choose? Or what kind of services might we add only in the event of a disaster? Usually when we do this training, this is all very hypothetical and people are thinking about it for the first time, but I think after COVID, all of these are already really familiar. But if you want more examples, we can do that. So the COOP planning process allows your organization the opportunity to decide in a non-emergency environment. I think Kim said this earlier, when you're in peacetime, plan for wartime. COOP planning is about when you're outside that environment of extreme stress and danger. What about what your organization or business does is most critical to your mission, And you can explore other options if part of that is threatened by the emergency event. So that could be looking at, well, what if our supply chain is threatened? What if we can't get certain materials that are here, that need to be here? What if some of our staff aren't available to work? What would that look like? Or what if our community is so overwhelmed with new urgent needs based on the disaster? What would it look like if we were like flooded with new clients overnight? It's really important to consider not just the primary person-to-person direct service, but also the behind-the-scenes operations, like preservation of confidential client records, staff payroll, which is also really critical to the ongoing operations of the organization. It's also important to remember that our staff may also be affected personally by this event, so we can't just assume that all of our staff will be available, especially in small organizations. Like if your payroll person is unavailable, how do you make sure that your staff still get paid? Because that absolutely needs to happen. You can't just assume that everyone's going to be able to keep working during a disaster if they're not getting paychecks. So COOP planning helps us do several things. Ensure the safety of our employees and clients, ensure the performance of our organization's essential functions during an emergency. These are kind of hierarchical, right? So physical safety is always first, essential functions next. We want to think about our essential equipment, records, facilities, and resources that we want to try to preserve as much as possible. We want to reduce disruptions from our operations if possible. We want to minimize damage or losses to our organizational assets. We also maybe want to identify potential relocation sites if our organization can't keep operating in the same physical space that we're used to. What would it look like to either have people work from home or otherwise remotely, or work from do we have a partner organization who could give us at least a little bit of physical space to operate if our own location was not able, if we couldn't access it. And then lastly, we want to maintain a testing, training, and exercise program. So unlike the basic emergency plan, not everyone in your organization needs to be super intimately familiar with everything about a business continuity plan, right? Like if I'm a frontline staff person, I don't need to know necessarily how I'm going to get a paycheck in a disaster. I just need to know that it's coming. So whereas with the basic emergency plan, you want every staff member and volunteer to know exactly how to exit, how to stay safe, where the fire extinguishers are, where the flashlights and first aid kits are. With the COOP plan, it's more like a need to know situation. Not every single member of your organization needs to be every part of that planning process, but they should have access to the information that will affect them. The most vital part of any COOP plan, I believe, is communication, because nothing will eradicate trust, safety, and solidarity faster than when there's a lack of information or misinformation. Usually when we think of the word redundant, we think of it as a bad thing, right? Because why do something twice when you could do it once and be efficient? But in disaster communication, redundancy is the gold standard. You want to have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D to get in touch with your colleagues and clients, right? So usually we communicate with email and phone, but what if we don't have access to the server to get client phone numbers? What if we can't get on our email? What if there's a power outage? Whatever. There are endless examples, and it will look different for different organizations. But it's really critical to think through how you're going to get in touch with people if your usual methods aren't available anymore, or if the information you need to contact someone is trapped in a device that won't turn on, or a device that isn't connected to the internet. I think a lot of people get really overwhelmed by the concept of COOP planning because it's very legitimately overwhelming. We think like, oh, well, the best plan is obviously the most detailed, the most nuanced, the most complex one that accounts for every possible disaster scenario. But no, the best plan is the one that you will actually make. So sometimes when I'm feeling overwhelmed personally in my life, I have to just put my to-do list away. I can't even look at it. And I start with a blank sheet of paper and I make a done list. So I write down everything I've already done that day to kind of build some momentum and remember that I'm not starting from scratch. And then I look around for what are the easiest things that I could do them and write it down. I like the tangibility of lists, but writing it down is not the important part. What's important is getting motivated and actually doing something. So please don't feel like you have to spend bottomless time and resources in order to create a COOP plan. If that's not possible, start small. If that's what needs to happen, anything you do to prepare on is an improvement and is worthwhile. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. I once talked with a nurse who worked at a hospital in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, and she talked about how when they lost power, they found the flashlights right away, and they had this moment of relief, like, yes, we made a plan, we stocked the things we needed, and we knew where to find them right away. And then her stomach just dropped because they didn't have batteries. And she just stood there for a minute looking at a drawer full of flashlights and no batteries. Like, how do we have flashlights and no batteries? So emergency planning for organization takes a lot of time and resources and a lot of collaboration. But if you're here as just one person from your organization thinking, my organization's not going to do all of these things, that doesn't mean that you can't do some of these things. So I would hate for anyone to leave this workshop thinking, well, we should be doing all of that, but we're not going to, so forget it. We'll worry about it next fiscal year. Please don't do that. Start small if that's what it takes. Make sure your flashlights have batteries and go from there. Sorry. I'm gonna come back to that if that's okay. So just like Carol talked a lot about go bags for individuals, families, households. For organizations, we can have something called a go bin. And that's a little bit of a misnomer because it's more of a like shelter in place bin, or I guess maybe a go bin if you're suddenly relocating to a new location. But this is like what you would want your staff and clients to have on hand if you needed to shelter in place or if you needed to go. And I won't read you everything on this list. It'll be shared with you after the presentation. But apply all that same knowledge and problem solving you had to your go bag to your go bin. And make sure also that it's reflective of your organization. So it's going to look a little bit different if you're a childcare center. Like what would you want to have based on who's around, if that makes sense? If you have a full kitchen in your building, what would it look like to have some kind of like kitchen related injury or emergency, and do you have supplies for that? So we'll open it up to discussion with this prompt. Imagine that it's day 3 of a heat wave and you're at work. Suddenly the power goes out and you realize you forgot to charge your phone and it's now at 2%. What, as an individual, do you want to have at your desk or in your bag when that happens? What kind of support would you want from your organization's leadership? And what immediate concerns would you have for your clients? So I guess we'll start with question 1. What would you personally want to have at your desk or in your bag when that happens?
We can use the chat, ladies and gentlemen, or if you're open to speaking out, we'd love to hear from you in this area, right? What as an individual would you like to have at your desk or in your bag when this happens? All right, feel free to shout out if you're interested, or feel free to use the chat for this reason. All right, so definitely the portable cell phone charger. Miss Carol, you got us with that cell phone charger.
Yeah.
Portable cell phone charger, portable batteries. Back to these batteries. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? What would you like to have in that bag or in your desk? That 3-day heat wave where you're sitting at work. Money, absolutely. Most definitely.
Can't hurt.
Definitely. Keep yourself a little $7 in that drawer.
Uh-huh.
That's right. Medication. Yes, if you have an asthma pump, you can have more than one asthma pump. Do you have one there? Do you have a Tylenol, Advil, anything? Some A&D ointment. Miss Carol talked about ointment. Granola bars, something non-perishable. Yes, some water. Absolutely. Things you want in your desk or in your bag during that heat wave.
Because now my lunch is going to spoil.
That's right. It absolutely will, because that refrigerator is not working,
Right.
because you don't have a solar refrigerator like Miss Carol does. Yes. Disposable ice pack. Absolutely. That's interesting. Battery operated fan. Back to the batteries again.
Yeah.
Yes. A hand fan. That's right.
Mhm.
Take it back. The hand fan. Sure. Like the one at church with the brown stick, right? You're standing there like this.
Yeah.
That's right. Hand fan. Absolutely. Evie, keep on rolling.
Okay. I just want to say, my first full-time job out of school was at Red Cross, and everyone I worked with Red Cross stocked their offices like they were prepared to move in on no notice for a month and would have been fine. So every job I went to after that, when people saw me move in on my first day, they'd be like, "Are you okay? Like, why do you need are you low-key living here? Like, why do you need all this stuff?" And then I was like, oh, not everyone thinks with that like emergency management brain, but I know you all are all coming around to my desk if anything happens. So
That's right.
go back to your own desk and figure your stuff out. Sorry. So a question, what kind of support would you want from your organization's leadership in that scenario?
What kind of support do we need, ladies and gentlemen? Support can look a lot of different ways, right? The truth, absolutely. Calm tone, overall disposition of your management, right? People in charge, having a plan in place, just having one. Evie talked about that. Even if it's a little something, it doesn't have to be complicated, but the key elements, right? Having a plan in place. What do we want from management and leadership? Absolutely. Yes, sense of togetherness, community. The idea that we're here together and we're going to move as one unit. The ability to get the supplies. Yes. Yes. Do people have access, right? Are you in an organization where everything's locked up and shut down? You can't find a hand sanitizer. You don't know where the pens are. The supply cabinet's locked up. Do you have the access to go get the things that you need? The ability to get the supplies from somewhere. Yes. Good stuff, Evie.
I just want to throw in, I used to work in communications for a really large organization. And this is not related to them necessarily at all, just something I had to think about. When something goes wrong, every minute that goes by is another minute that your staff and volunteers or clients are spinning out thinking, what's going to happen? What are they doing back there? So in leadership, even though you know you're working on it, your staff doesn't know you're working on it unless you tell them. So even when you feel like, well, there's no information to share yet. Yes, there is. The information is, we know that something happened. This is what we're doing to work on it. We'll get back to you via these methods as soon as possible or within this time frame. And here's what you can do if you feel like as a staff member or volunteer, you have such an overwhelming, urgent situation that you need help urgently. Let people know how to communicate that.
Absolutely.
So like
proactive.
The idea that no news is good news is absolutely not true.
It's true.
When something bad has happened, let your staff and volunteers and clients know that you're working on it, and that will help to alleviate some stress.
That proactive communication and visibility, very important.
Sorry. And then lastly, what immediate concerns do you have for your clients in that situation? Knowing who to contact.
Evie, somebody in the chat, Milagro is putting in, who can go home first, right? Yeah, what is the succession plan in place? Who's leaving and when, who's staying around and when?
Yeah.
Know who to contact is also in our note there. And mental and physical health as well of the clients and concerns, of the clients is a concern.
Right. You have to make a plan. If you have to assume that if your staff or volunteers are affected personally by this emergency at home, they're going to want to go home, and they should. So you have to assume some kind of like exodus of staff, because that's what's best. Okay. So, sorry, I'm back and forth. So we talked about organizational or like business planning. Now we're going to talk a little bit about planning as a community. And this is really the bedrock of what the COAD is and does and wants to do. As Carol mentioned, I think like emergency planning is all the time. It's a year-round thing. We usually think of resilience as something we think about after something bad happens, but we also, as much as possible, want to think about it all the time before something happens. I forget the name for it, but there's like a very predictable curve about people's interest in emergency preparedness after something happens. And then there's a drop off because we get saturated with it, right? We just want to move on. We want to forget. We're very legitimately traumatized. Like that's a human trauma response, and there's nothing, that's a very natural response. However, for our own best interest and for our community best interest, we want to use whatever capacity we have to not ignore those threats and try to like learn from that experience and not just bury it, even though it might be difficult. So think about building resilience all the time, not just after something bad happens. Join the COAD, obviously. We're very open to new members. If you're interested in that, please reach out to us at eastharlemcoad.org or eastharlemcoad@gmail.com. The bigger we are, the stronger we are, and we're basically all about building like awareness and preparedness and really supporting each other as a community, not if, but when something happens. Community mapping is, just being really aware of like what's around you as an organization. What are your nearest resources? What are your nearest like potential threats? Like what's around that might be a problem for your organization? What's around that might be helpful for your organization during a disaster? I don't know if Carol mentioned earlier, CERT teams are community emergency response teams, and it's sort of like volunteer firefighter, except you're a volunteer all-around first responder. So that could look like a lot of different things. And actually, Carol's the expert there, so I'm just going to throw it to her really quickly for a brief overview of CERT, if that's okay.
Sure. CERT is a program that's taught. It's twice a week. It's, I believe, 6 weeks now, and you will learn about basic first aid. We're actually fourth responders. So we would be in a position to assist the neighborhood if something happens. As a chief, if I saw a fire in a building, I can call NISM and I can say, listen, there's a fire here. Can I activate the team? We have to be activated by CERT. And we can go in, we can block off the street, we can redirect traffic, we can create a staging area, we can create a triage area, we can do basic first aid, putting out small fires, and basic community awareness. So it's like really ideal, and you can go with whatever. They have people who are deaf in CERT, blind. I think I was the only wheelchair person, and they accepted me at the time when I went in. So it's major. We're trying to get them in all of the housing projects. If we could get them in all of the NYCHA projects, that would be so unique. So you just go to nyc.gov/CERT, and you can get all that information.
Thank you so much, Carol. So just to wrap up, these things are coming to your inbox: a recording of this event, handouts, all the resources that we mentioned. Also, just as a parting thought before we go back to Kim and Q&A, I just want to remind you, I know this was a lot of information, and coming at this from the COVID environment, we're all so overwhelmed with this seemingly never-ending disaster. It can be really easy to just shut this out and think this is too much. But something is better than nothing. So please don't feel like you have to do everything in order to be prepared. Anything you can do is an improvement. So try to reach for what feels possible. Thank you so much for being here. Kim?
Sure. Thank you so much, Evie, for that. That was excellent. Once again, Evie mentioned some very important points as it relates to organization and organizational planning. You can always start with something. Always start with something. Not only that, this gives you an opportunity to really think about the infrastructure of your organizations, right? Organizations, staff, everybody change over a lot of times for a lot of different reasons. We want to always try to make sure we have a core of people who are able to understand what our response plan is and the process for the execution. So at this point, if you have the time, if you're part of a faith institution, university, school, whatever, your senior organization, whatever you have, pull some people together with your leadership and say, look, I just had a presentation that I attended in disaster management. Some really good tips were given to me about some things that maybe we need to think about purchasing or requesting or whatever. We need to prepare our own bag, our own organizational go bin, if you will. And we also need to think about the who's who in our organizations. Where are your documents? Are they accessible? Where is your evacuation plan? Do you know how to get out of the building, right? How do you do that stuff? When was the last time we had that kind of a meeting? When was the last time that was incorporated into your day-to-day activities? Doesn't really happen much, right? Because we're so focused on outcomes, we're focused on responding. A lot of times we're reacting and responding to crises that occur. But now we have to be a little more pointed in our approach because we're now armed with the information, right? That Carol gave us and that Evie gave us. As a social worker, I'm always interested in empowerment, self-determination, and really helping people to be their absolute best. A lot of times we think that people may not be able to do things because of their circumstances. But what COVID has showed us is that people have taken time to really be proactive in helping themselves. They've had to, right? Because some of the social services and systems that are available have been flooded with people and been working with limited resources. So people have had to think about how they're going to help themselves, how communities are going to help themselves stay afloat and thrive. How do we share resources that we have? If I have 2 bags of beans and a 10-pound bag of rice, how are we going to get together, get this pot of rice cooked, and make sure that the people on that floor can get a little bowl of rice and beans if we need to? We're very conscientious about these things now. So we don't want to lose it because, COVID has kind of started to kind of become a little more, I don't want to say stabilized. I don't want to say COVID is stabilized, but you guys know what I mean, right? Now that the urgency appears to not be there, which it still should be, right? We want to use this time to really be critical in our thinking and our approach toward moving forward with prevention. Miss Carol and Evie gave us preventive tools. So we have some information. I challenge you if you can, let's go and get started. Please utilize your officials, your government officials, your city council. If you are interested to request, hey, listen, is there any money available for my little building, my little block? We'd like to have maybe $500 to get some zippy bags, some waterproof zippy bags so that we can distribute to the people on our block to help create a to-go bag. If you're an activist, a person who's involved in activism or want to get started, you can always write a letter to your city official and ask them. I know you guys got $200 to give us to buy some zippy bags for our block. Ask the questions, right? If you don't ask, you won't get the support that you need. So there's no request that's too big, no request that's too small, right? We do have a lot of vulnerable people. We have to be mindful about language that we use, right? We have to be mindful about language as well. Do we have people who speak different languages who are able to reach folks who may not be able to speak English, right? Who can translate for you if you need to? Do you know somebody? Is there a service? Are you connected to an organization that could help to reach people who speak a language other than English, but still need the information, of course? What about children? Medical. I think about John a few minutes ago, he joked with us that he was, on vacation at this time, but he had to get on the plane. And the flight attendant said, what? Put your mask on before anybody else's. So you are now armed to put your mask on. You're armed to get your bag and your stuff together. And I'm gonna promise you that reflection that you're gonna have when you're preparing for yourself, it will really help to empower you and help you to explain better the urgency of doing this for a larger group as well. All right, so you have to do your part for yourself in order to help someone else. No task is too big or too small. Miss Carol talked about this battery. I'm gonna tell you, I'm getting some. She talked about some water, and we didn't really get deeply detailed into some of the food items, but I remember some of us were online for 2 hours for a pack of chicken breast, right? If you have a deep freezer, fill up your deep freezer if you can. Try to think about those things, right? Be mindful. Start planning now. I went to BJ's the other day. The floor was looking a little sketchy. The water area, I don't know if it was about being restocked or what, but we also know there's a Delta variant as it relates to COVID-19, a new strain that's in place right now that is really, really impacting a lot of people. Carol told us to get the water.
Can
Evie
I
told us,
interject something here?
yes, absolutely.
In the summertime, we don't want you to get a lot of meat because if there's a blackout, it's going to be lost. However, what you
That's
can
right.
do is when you buy your meats, wash them, season them, have them prepared. I'm going to share something that I've done. I have my stenos and my sternos and my racks that I use when I have company to keep my food hot. I use those during a blackout. I put a little oil in the pan. I can fry fish. I can do potatoes. I do everything I need to do. You know, I can fill it up with oil. I can fry some chicken. The food is already prepared. The meat is already. I can just go ahead and do that. I can get a cooler. Put some ice in there. When the lights go out, fill that cooler up immediately with ice. Let the meat stay in the freezer until it starts to slightly thaw, then transfer it over to your cooler because then you'll get more of an opportunity before it goes bad. But you can make whole meals. I get the half pans. I throw a can of string beans in there. Make sure you have a manual can opener. It don't depend on flip tops because how many times have I flipped it in and it flipped right off? So, you make sure you have a can opener at all times in your drawer. And, I'll open up some green beans and throw it in the little half pan, put it on the sterno. I make rice in the sterno. I make potatoes. I fry bacon. I made pork chops, chicken. I will send you information where you can actually eat. Because just because you're in an emergency, I'm a foodie, like I said. Just because you're in an emergency does not mean you can't eat and eat well. You should not have to eat junk. One thing I left out, sanitation is so vital. So you want to eat things that don't cause you to have to go to the bathroom a lot if you are in a stay at home, a sheltering in place situation. And one thing I'm going to add, the last thing, people cringe when I say this. I live alone. I have a bucket. It's a 5-gallon bucket. I took one of those pillows that you use when you fly. I haven't flown in years. I took that and I sat it on the top of that bucket. I filled it with kitty litter. I got a dollar scoop from the store because if you live in a high rise and there's a blackout, your sanitation is going out. You won't be able to flush your toilets. If you have a family, imagine 5 people in a household trying to go to the bathroom, everybody trying to flush the toilet, and it's just piling up in there. Get the kitty litter. It will control odor. You have a lid to the canister, and that's what I would use for my sanitation needs.
This is the kind of thing what I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen. This is what I'm saying. We're being armed right now with some information. Any questions, anything before we transition out? Any questions at all? Any comments that you'd like to make? Shout it out.
I am Mark Matthew.
Yes, Mark, welcome.
Last year, but Miss Carol Johnson is our community treasure. And it's all about putting the resources together. When the building exploded, many of the people, including our elected officials, not know where the resources are. Miss Carol Johnson, she is the person with the knowledge and the expertise. And so I am glad that she is here, and I'm thankful to the COAD for the information, because when the pandemic hit, especially in Harlem, and Ms. Johnson can tell you, we have been trying to put this community preparedness and many ignore us, and many in our community don't have as much as flashlight, let alone batteries.
Mm,
And so the time to prepare is now,
mhm.
to make sure that we have these things, the go bags and the tools and resources in place. And so once again, I thank you for this platform, and any time that Miss Carol Johnson has the opportunity to dispense the knowledge and the information, we would be wise to sit at her feet to get this training.
Oh, we
Thank you.
thank you for such a wonderful comment, Mark. Thank you so much for sharing. Miss Carol, thank you so much for today. It's been an hour. Oh, Miss Luz would like to say
Yes.
something, and John, and then we're gonna close out. Luz?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Luz
Good
Martinez.
afternoon.
I'm with the New York City Poison Control Center. We
Mm.
conduct webinars about medicine safety, and I'm really happy I attended this meeting today because I learned so much, and I'm definitely going to incorporate in my presentation some of the very useful tips regarding medication. So thank you. Everything was awesome. I am so excited that I was able to link today with everyone. Great resources. Thank you. And, you know, heads up, thumbs up for the great work that you do.
Oh, thank you, Luz. Please, if you're interested, please put your information in the chat so that we can get this network list together and start to really partner and deliver this information on various platforms. Thank you so much for that. Very important. John, I know you have the final word.
I just wanted to say, Ms. Carol, thank you so much. And I know Mark from WEAC, that organization.
Me too.
But can I ask a silly question? If you use the kitty litter thing, I'm a cat person. My cats are gonna get upset.
S-
I just had to say that.
Separate yours from theirs.
Okay.
Don't do your toileting together. Put yours in
Yes.
one room and put theirs in another room.
Raina,
I
we're
also
with you.
ask everyone to please fill out the post-workshop survey. I dropped it in, I'll drop it again, and also check out our upcoming workshops. So that will also be included in the links that Evie sends later with all the networking information and all your emails.
Thank you, Raina, for keeping us together today, for everything you did. Please, please, ladies and gentlemen, please do the survey at the end. This is very important. It's our way to be able to track kind of who's here, what we need to do going forward, and to help us prepare content for our work. So it's 2:02. God bless you all. Thank you for a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. Miss Carol, Evie, thank you once again. It's been an absolute joy. Please drop your name inside and your email in this chat box so we can keep you posted with information, all right? Evie, you have anything? You good?
That's all. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Take good care and go get those batteries. We're going to Carol's house.
Bye, guys. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you all.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you.
Enjoy your day and stay safe.
Yes, yes, yes.